The last battle was supposed to be the end. The war had been long and bloody. For over 200 years, the Karn Empire had marched across the galaxy, crushing anyone who stood in their way. Planet after planet fell before their ships. Race after race was broken. The stars that once held life now burned with silence. The Karn believed their victory was complete. In their grand halls, they sang songs of conquest. They called themselves the bringers of peace. But their peace was built on ashes. High above a gray planet called Delta 7, Karn soldiers stood inside a control ship. The commander of the mission, Darnok, stood tall in his black armor. He looked out the wide window, watching the smoke rise from the ground below. The last battle had ended only days ago. The final rebel base had fallen. His voice echoed through the bridge as he said the words his people had waited centuries to hear. The war is over, his crew cheered. Soldiers shouted. Some removed their helmets and laughed. Messages were sent to the Empire. Victory confirmed. Cleanup squads were sent to the surface to search for any remaining life. The orders were simple. Scan the ruins, collect weapons, burn what's left. But deep in the ruins of Delta 7, something moved at. First, the scanners didn't notice the life. Signs were weak. One signal flickered for a moment, then vanished. The officer at the console thought it was a glitch. He was about to shut down the scanner when it blinked again. Faint but real, a single life form. The officer frowned and ran. The scan again. Same result. One unknown life form in Sector 9G. It was not Karn. It was not registered in any known species database, he reported to Darnok. The commander looked at the screen and shook his head. One being is nothing. We have destroyed fleets. What can one do still? To follow protocol, Darnok sent a scout squad. 5 soldiers dropped to the surface in a dark shuttle. They were armed and alert, but not afraid. The target was alone, unarmed and wounded. The leader of the squad joked as they landed. This will be over in minutes. We'll be back before the tea goes cold. The squad moved through the broken city. Buildings were crushed. Roads turned to dust. The wind carried the smell of fire and metal. They followed the signal into a tunnel under a collapsed tower. It was quiet, too quiet. The squad leader ordered a sweep formation. They moved in carefully. Weapons ready. Nothing moved, then something exploded. A small homemade device blew near the rear guard, throwing him into a wall. Before the others could react, a shadow dropped from above. Fast and silent, one Karn fell, then another. Screams echoed in the tunnel. The leader turned just in time to see a figure in black armor vanish into smoke. Only one soldier crawled out. Alive, he was missing an arm and half his helmet. He mumbled to the rescue team that came later. He was human, just one human. He moved like wind. He fought like death. The news shocked the Karn command. Darnok demanded answers. How did one human survive the final strike? The records showed all humans on Delta 7 were killed. No one had escaped. He ordered a second team, larger and better armed. This time 10 soldiers went in. They did not return now. Fear started to whisper inside the Karn Empire. The idea was impossible. One man could not stop the machine of war. But something had happened on Delta 7. Something they could not explain. Darnok ordered full satellite scans of the area. Drones flew over the ruin, searching every inch. But the humans stayed hidden. He used the shadows. He used the ruins. He knew the terrain better than the Karn ever could. He was not running, he was hunting. The Empire sent spies to learn more. They searched old records. They found fragments of a name. A soldier trained in survival tactics. A man who had lost everything in the first wave of the war. His family destroyed. His home burned. Yet he had not surrendered. He had disappeared into the wild places of war and never stopped fighting. They called him an error in the system. A leftover glitch. Something that should not exist. But now that glitch was killing elite soldiers, burning supply points. cutting off communication lines. All from the shadows, the people of the Karn Empire began to murmur in secret. Some refused to believe the stories. Others whispered legends. They spoke of a ghost covered in ash with eyes like fire. A being who rose from death to bring judgment. Darnak was no longer calm. His eyes burned with frustration. He ordered a full lockdown of Delta to 7. No ships in or out. No signals. No survivors. This human was not to be feared, he said. He would be crushed like the rest. But deep in the tunnels, the human watched the skies. He knew they were coming. He had expected it. His body was tired, his arm was wounded, but his spirit burned like a storm. He checked his weapon. He listened to the wind. Then he moved because the war was not over for him. Not yet. The human refused to die. The Karn Empire believed in power. They trusted in numbers, weapons, and fear. Every enemy they had faced before fell under the weight of their armies. Their ships blocked the skies, their machines shook the ground. Victory was always theirs. But now that belief began to crack. The human had survived more than just the final battle. He had outlived entire armies. He moved like smoke across the ruined cities. His presence was not seen but felt. A burnt transport here. A missing patrol there. Explosions that came from nowhere. The Karn could not predict him. They could not find him. And most of all, they could not stop him. Commander Darnak watched the latest report in silence. Another squad lost. 12 of the Empire's best gone without a trace. The only evidence left behind was a single Karn helmet, placed carefully on a broken wall. A message carved into it with a sharp blade. "I am still Harry." Darnak crushed the report in his fist. This was not a war anymore. This was insult. This was humiliation. A single human dared to defy the will of the Empire. He would not allow it. He summoned a special unit, trained in jungle warfare and urban combat. 20 soldiers this time. No mistakes. No mercy. The squad landed quietly in the night. They wore dark armor and carried thermal sensors and motion trackers. They moved through the ruined city with perfect coordination. Buildings cleared, tunnels sealed. Scanners checked every corner. Nothing but the human had already watched them arrive. From the shadows he studied their movement. He did not attack right away. He waited. He listened. He learned their rhythm. He moved when the wind moved. He stepped only when the noise of crumbling walls covered his sound. Hours later, a soldier went missing. They found his body hanging from a metal beam just outside the search zone. No marks. No sound. Just gone. The leader of the squad ordered tighter formations. They moved closer together. More sensors. More drones. Still the human was faster, smarter, quieter. Another soldier vanished. Then another. Panic began to rise. The Karn were trained for fear, but this was different. They were not fighting an army. They were fighting the unknown. Darnak received the distress signal. He ordered them to hold position and wait for backup. Reinforcements would arrive in 2 hours. But they never made it. The shuttle exploded in the sky before it could land. A small homemade missile launched from a hidden spot. The squad below was trapped by dawn. Only 5 remained. They found themselves in a circle of fire. Smoke filled the ruins. The human stepped out for the first time. Not a ghost. Not a machine. Just a man. His armor was damaged. His arm was bleeding. But his eyes burned with something they had never seen before. Not rage, not madness, but purpose. He moved like he had done this all his life. Quick strikes, smart moves, no wasted steps. The Karn fought back. Blasters fired. The ground shook. But he was already gone when the dust settled. He stood alone. From the command ship above, Darnak watched the last camera feed go dark. His face was stone cold. This was beyond failure. This was disaster. His officers looked at him, waiting for orders. Some wanted to evacuate. Others wanted to bomb the entire region, but Darnak refused. He would not show weakness. He sent drones to scan the area again. Nothing appeared. The human had vanished into the ruins. No trail, no heat, no signal, as if the earth had swallowed him, but he was not gone. The human was already moving to the next location. There were other camps, other supply lines, other targets. He had learned long ago how the Karn worked. He knew their routines, their arrogance. He used their strength against them. He planted traps near energy lines. He disrupted communication towers. He poisoned food stores using old chemicals he found in the ruins. Every action had meaning. Every strike weakened the Empire. At night he rested in broken shelters. He patched his wounds with strips of cloth. He cooked small fires that gave no smoke. His face was tired, his body scarred. But his mind was clear. He thought of the ones who had fallen before, the families, the fighters, the friends, the ones who believed freedom was worth fighting for. He carried their memory in every step he took. He was not just surviving. He was fighting for all of them. Across the galaxy, the Karn Empire started to hear the whispers. One man, one planet, and still they failed to control it. Other species still, under Karn rule, began to listen. Hope was a rare thing. But stories have power. They said he was still out there. They said he could not be killed. They said he refused to die inside the Empire. Some began to question. Some began to fear. Others began to believe, and the human kept moving, because for him the war was never over. Not yet. They called him a ghost. The Karn Empire had stopped celebrating. What was once a proud voice across the stars had now gone quiet. Songs of victory no longer echoed in their halls. Cheers had turned into whispers. Fear began to take root in places where power once lived. In the command center above Delta 7, Commander Darnuk stared at the map. Red dots marked fallen patrols, supply lines broken, communication posts destroyed. All signs pointed to one single cause. One human. A man without an army. A man without backup. A man who refused to die. The soldiers had started calling him the Ghost. He was never seen in full light. He moved between shadows. His steps left no sound. Drones picked up nothing. Scanners showed only broken wind. His presence was known only through destruction. One moment everything was fine. The next it was fire and loss. Darnuk sent word across the Empire. He ordered a halt on the Delta 7 campaign. No more patrols, no more squads. Instead he summoned the Shadow Division. Elite Karn warriors trained in silent combat. These soldiers wore dark armor with no marks. Their names were removed from records. Their work was hidden from history. They were not meant to fight wars. They were meant to end threats before they began. 10 of them landed on Delta 7, each one skilled in tracking and hunting. They studied the ruins with calm eyes. They used old war techniques. They moved like the human did, slow, patient, quiet. They laid out traps in empty streets. They listened to the wind and waited for movement. But the human was watching them too. From the top of a broken tower he looked down. His face was half covered in dirt. His weapon rested on his lap. He had been here before the war. He had walked these streets when they were alive. Shops, homes, laughter, all gone now. Burned and crushed under Karn boots. He knew what these new soldiers were. They were not like the others. They did not talk. They did not joke. They did not fear. That made them dangerous. But he did not plan to run. He had a plan. That night he moved between the buildings like a shadow himself. He used old tunnels, broken vents, empty sewers. He placed sound traps in one zone. He spread false heat signals in another. He made them believe he was everywhere when he was somewhere else. The first shadow soldier stepped into a room that looked untouched. A fire lit in the corner, a signal beacon glowing. He signaled to the others and moved forward. But as he took one step closer, the floor gave in. A silent blast threw him into darkness. The room collapsed. By the time the others arrived there was nothing left to find. The next night another one vanished. No sound, no trace. Just gone. The remaining soldiers grew more careful, but even they started to feel the fear. They began to wonder if they were hunting or being hunted. One whispered to another that this human was not normal. He did not move like others. He did not think like others. He turned the ruins into his world. A world they did not understand. They tried to corner him near the broken energy plant. They believed he would come there for supplies. They hid across rooftops. They waited in silence. Hours passed. Then something flickered near the gates. One soldier moved closer. His scanner blinked. Life form detected. He gave the signal and rushed in. It was a decoy, a broken drone dressed in scraps. As he turned to report, the trap was triggered. The wall exploded behind him. 2 more soldiers fell in the blast. The rest pulled back, but it was too late. The human was already gone by. Morning, only 4 of the Shadow Division remained. Commander Darnock received the report and felt the weight press down on his chest. He slammed his fist into the table. How could one man break their strongest warriors? How could a single soldier challenge the whole might of the Karn Empire? The human had become more than a threat. He had become a symbol across hidden networks. The message started to spread. Some from old resistance cells sent signals through broken channels. They asked if the stories were true. Was the ghost real? Was there still a human out there fighting? Hope began to rise in small corners of the galaxy, not loud, not proud, but growing in a secret place under the ruins. The human patched his shoulder. A Karn blade had scraped him during the last fight. He used cloth and fire to stop the bleeding. His hands shook, but he kept going. There was no one to help, no doctor, no supplies. Only him and his will. He looked at an old photo kept in a sealed pocket. A face, a smile, a memory. It gave him strength. He could not stop. Not now. Not when the Empire was afraid. Not when others were starting to believe. He stepped out into the dark. His eyes scanned the sky. The Karn still ruled the stars. But here on this broken world, they no longer ruled the ground. He would take back more than a city. He would take back fear itself, because a ghost cannot be caught, and a human who refuses to fall cannot be defeated. The one who fights alone. The Karn Empire had always believed in total control. Every corner of the galaxy was mapped. Every signal was watched. Every threat was crushed before it could grow. That belief had given them strength for centuries. But now that belief was cracking. Delta 7 had become a place of shame. What was once a symbol of victory had turned into a nightmare. The humans still lived, still fought, still caused fear. Shadow Division was down to 3. Trained killers now moved like hunted prey. They avoided open ground. They whispered instead of speaking. Even machines had stopped helping. Drones vanished. Scanners failed. Everything the Karn trusted was useless here. Commander Darnock sat in silence. His officers stood around him with pale faces. No one wanted to speak first. The room was heavy. Not from heat, not from silence, but from something deeper. Something the Karn had never faced before. Darnock finally spoke. His voice was calm but cold. He said the human had turned war into something else. No longer battles, no longer numbers. Now it was a message. A spark. If they let that spark spread, the Empire would face more than one man. So he made a plan. He ordered a false signal to be sent across the planet. A message that said survivors had been found, weak, injured, hidden in a camp near the old tower ruins. He knew the human would hear it. He knew the human would come. The bait was placed. 10 prisoners taken from another planet, forced to wear old human uniforms, set up near the ruins, tied, beaten, left under low guards. Karn soldiers acted tired, left weapons lying around, made it look like a mistake, but it was not a mistake. Snipers were hidden in broken walls. Blasters pointed from behind shadows. Energy nets waited under the ground. The best Karn commander after Darnok himself stood at the center of the trap. His name was Carol, cold, smart, precise. He had studied every report on the human. He did not believe in ghosts. He believed in targets. They waited for hours. Then the signal flashed. One guard near the edge vanished. No sound, no warning. Just Carol did not panic. He gave quiet orders. Tighten the lines. Watch the wind. No one fires until I say. The human appeared just as the sun dipped low. He moved through the ruins. Without fear, his face was covered with dirt. His armor was scratched, but he walked like he had walked this path before. As if the land itself welcomed him, he moved fast, cut the ropes, helped the prisoners to their feet, told them to follow. His signals, not a word wasted. Carl gave the order. Traps launched. Nets flew. Blasters fired, but the human had already shifted. He moved with the prisoners between buildings, led them through a narrow crack in the wall, turned left where they expected right, set off traps using metal pipes and rocks, confused the sensors. With heat flares, smoke covered the field. Screams followed. Carl chased. His team followed. But the human was not running. He was leading. Every step he took pulled them further from safety. Every turn placed them deeper into his ground. Explosions came from the rooftops. Old fuel lines caught fire. Machines failed. Guns jammed. Carl saw his team fall one by one. He shouted for them to regroup, but signals were lost. Static filled the air. His tracker blinked, then went black. The human stood waiting in the heart of the ruins. Carol faced him. No words, just breath and silence. He raised his weapon, fired, but the shot missed. The human moved in close, fast. Carol blocked the first strike, felt the second. In his ribs, metal against bone. The third hit knocked the wind from his chest. The human did not kill him. He looked into his eyes and said something that cut deeper than any blade. You fight for control. I fight for what was taken. Carol dropped to the ground as the human vanished into the smoke again. The prisoners reached safety, hidden under a tunnel that led to the mountains. The human gave them a map, told them where to find supplies, where to find others. Before they left, one of them turned and asked, "Why are you still here?" He looked at the rising sun with tired eyes. "Because someone has to. Remind them, we don't break that easy." The message spread faster than the fire on Delta 7. Across the stars, small groups began to move. Old resistance signals blinked again. Old fighters came out from hiding. They wore no banners. They made no loud claims. But they moved with new strength. A story had reached them. A story of one man, still fighting, still standing, still burning. With purpose, the Karn Empire could feel the shift. Darnok looked at the reports. His hands trembled. He saw the pattern. One man had turned a planet into a battlefield of meaning. One man had shown the galaxy that fear had limits. One man had pulled the mask off the Empire and shown the truth beneath. Darnok gave one final order. Erase the story, burn the ruins, kill the ghost. But it was too late. The fire had already spread, and the one who fought alone was no longer alone. Empire falls with a whisper. The sky above Delta 7 had turned red again, but this time it was not from bombs or blasters. This time it was from fire spreading across the wreckage of war buildings turned into ash towers falling into dust. The Karn Empire had tried to silence the ghost, but the ghost had become something more than just a man. He had become a storm commander. Darnok stood inside the war chamber, staring at the live feed from the planet below. His officers waited for orders, but no one spoke. They had all seen the last report: resistance movements rising on 6 different planets. Broken signals from outposts, reports of lost transports and missing soldiers. Fear was no longer hiding. It was walking openly through the halls of the Empire and Delta 7. The human moved like wind through the smoke. He did not stop, he did not rest. The Empire had sent their best, but he was still standing. He had no army, but his footsteps made the ground shake. Now the whispers of his survival had become clear signals across the stars. Survivors calling each other, old fighters returning from exile. They were not shouting, they were preparing. The Karn launched their final plan, a full-scale bombing run across Delta 7. Not one part of the surface was to be left untouched. They believed if they turned the ruins into dust, the story would die. With it, they sent the largest ship they had, orbiting high and armed with fire that could break mountains. But the human already knew. He had studied their ships during the first wave of war. He had learned their timing, their weapons, their weaknesses. He had watched the sky as the clouds broke open. He had already moved deep into the earth, through tunnels forgotten. By time the bombing began, with fire louder than thunder, the ground cracked, buildings vanished, light filled every corner. But still, somewhere below in the broken dark, the human survived. He held his breath as rock shook. Above him he pressed against the cold wall and waited for silence. When it came, he climbed back to the surface. The air was thick with heat and smoke. His arm burned, his leg shook, but he walked forward each step, quiet, each breath steady. The bombing had failed again. The planet still held its ghost. The story spread faster. Now the resistance groups saw the Empire's fear and grew bolder on planets. Once silenced graffiti appeared on walls, images of a figure with no name standing in flames, weapons in hand, hope painted in ash. The Karn tried to erase them, but the images came back every night, louder, brighter, stronger. One Karn officer in a distant colony watched his soldiers walk out. They left their weapons behind. They had seen the footage of Delta 7. They had listened to the human's voice carried over broken channels. They no longer believed in the Empire. On Delta 7, a signal tower blinked for the first time in years. It sent a message into deep space, a voice spoken not with rage, but with calm strength. The human spoke few words. You crushed the stars, but you never broke the fire inside. US, we are not done. Message echoed across system. Survivors cheered, others cried for the first time in years. They felt the silence break. Commander Danak lost control of 5 more sectors within one cycle. Ships refused orders, bases shut down from inside. His empire was no longer made of steel, it had turned into glass. He tried to send new forces to Delta 7, but no pilot would fly there. They called it the cursed planet. They said no soldier returns from the place where the ghost walks. The human walked through the ruins and found the helmet of one of the first Karn soldiers who had chased him. He picked it up and placed it on a wall beside the others. Each helmet told a part of the story. Each one reminded him of the cost of silence. In the distance he saw shadows moving. Not Karn, not enemies, but people, humans, old, young, some in armor, some just with tools. They had come not to fight, but to build. They brought water, food, old machines, maps. They came without orders. They came because they believed. Human nodded once and walked toward them, his legs weak, but his purpose strong. They helped him stand, helped him rest. One placed a hand on his shoulder and said, your fire lit the way. The ruins began to shift. Old buildings cleared, tunnels mapped, walls painted with names of the lost. The ground that once screamed with pain now began to hum with hope. Across the galaxy the Karn Empire cracked. No great battle, no massive fleet, no loud collapse, only silence where there was once control. People stopped obeying leaders, stopped commanding, fear stopped working, and at the center of it all stood one man, dirty, tired, scarred, but alive. The stars watched as the human walked forward into the morning light. No medals, no throne, no parade, only the path ahead and the people behind. They defeated every enemy, but they never understood what it meant to face a human who fights with nothing but heart. The war ended not with a roar, but with a whisper, and that whisper carried farther than any empire ever could. The end.